Don't you hate it when this happens?
Potential right now is you got almost about 336,000 gallons of sweet light crude oil per day that was coming out of that well. So that oil will be, released in the water now.
If you're like me, mistakes like this can be pretty frustrating at times. How can BP, a company we all know and love who has never made a slip-up like this before, have such a terrible accident? Whenever a multi-billion-dollar corporation that I love makes a mistake, it seems like there's no one left to trust. But sometimes we need a little perspective on the issues that only a guy on YouTube named Foxness can provide. I can show you how you too can look past the occasional slip-up and incidental indiscretion so you can continue enjoying large corporations without your morals and conscience telling you not to. Because the last thing that needs to be on your mind when filling up your car and getting an icy is this.
You can see the blowdown stack still emitting flames as hydrocarbons are released.
Ah crap, wrong footage.
At this time, but there will be other plans in place to try to cap that well and mitigate this pollution.
Let's start with the basics. Firstly, accidents happen. These corporations can't control everything, like how often safety mechanisms are inspected, how well trained their employees and contractors are, and whether or not they'll care if things can or will go wrong. Some things are just out of reach for these companies, and it's a little ridiculous to think that they can control everything. For example, Boeing couldn't control the fact that bolts were missing on their plane. How many times have you gotten home and felt a pin that you were supposed to give back to your coworker in your pocket? Should we investigate you for negligence and lying to the people that trust you? I think not. I'm sure the employee that was supposed to put those bolts in went home and had a few surprises in his jacket pockets. And we shouldn't blame the whole company for that, just that one guy. My homeboy JC once said, if you have somehow gone your whole life without doing anything wrong, you can judge others. And I live by those words. I don't look down on others just because their shortcomings are different than mine. If I were to criticize Purdue Pharma for intentionally causing the opioid crisis to line their pockets, they could easily criticize me for parking too close to other cars in a way that makes it hard for people to get in and out.
You apologize for the role you played in the opioid crisis.
There's nothing that I can find that I would have done differently.
We have to be open to seeing the people that run these companies as fallible and human, just like us. And even though they make decisions that are morally detestable and legally questionable, there's been a point in everyone's life where they ate Taco Bell at least 4 times a week even though we know it's wrong. Next, these companies sometimes have to do things to stay in business, namely cut corners. Acting like the best of us haven't cut corners from time to time to save a little bit of bread is dishonest, and we can't be hypocritical about this sort of thing. Some people think that they're better than Bayer just because Bayer sold tainted plasma in the 1980s to underdeveloped countries and sold clean plasma in the US.
So for those that don't know about this case, can you quickly explain how Bayer was able to sell HIV-contaminated blood products to the public and how early Bayer knew about the problem?
Well, they knew about it within a year and a half after the product was on the market.
If you think that way, you need to realize that Bayer had a lot of product to go through, and they just couldn't throw away product just because it had a little AIDS in it. Think of it like this. Think of that time you swore you were going to finally eat healthier, and you bought a bunch of fruits and vegetables, and instead of eating those, you kept making Hot Pockets. Should you have thrown the fruits and veggies out when they got bad? Yes, but fresh produce is expensive, and you hadn't touched it. So you didn't want to feel like you just spent $40 on decorations that attract flies, so you finally ate one of the bananas and never looked back on your way to the toilet. People like to cast stones at Apple for having nets outside of the windows at their production facilities in China that pay less than $3 an hour to the people that make their $1,200 phones that easily sell millions of units.
Most of the people at Foxconn earn just over $2 an hour and strive for a 60-hour work week.
I think that the employees should be paid more for their work, but I also think Apple believes that as well. I think Apple wants to pay all their employees as much as they're worth, which is priceless. However, sometimes we all have to make decisions that can seem heartless and cruel to others, but if I'm always helping others achieve their goals, who's going to achieve mine? When Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne founded Apple in the 1970s, they probably had the goal of get all the monies. And even though they are now the first $3 trillion company, they still have a ways to go before they accomplish that goal. So if they decided to suddenly pay the people in China that work their little hearts out more and give them conditions that the negative Nancys may call the bare minimum, then Apple is slowing down on their goal, which I have it in good faith that would be bad for the economy. Plus, you wouldn't want someone telling you that you should always park at the very end of the parking lot because someone more needy may need the space that you would have taken, because screw them, they should have gotten there first if it was so important to them. Basically, the point that I'm trying to make is even the people that sit on golden toilets on their yachts and private jets are still human. I'm sure that they don't want to make these hard decisions as much as anyone else, and when things go wrong, they want the people who directly cause these problems to be held accountable, especially if it's not themselves. I don't have to do the hard things they do, and I still feel like my mistakes and bad choices affect more people than they actually do, so imagine how they felt when they discovered that asbestos was actually bad for you. The things that they have to oversee and try to work through are difficult, and sometimes things fall through the cracks. So the next time you see a billionaire on the street, instead of turning up your nose, try to show a little compassion.